Welcome to the Management Advantage podcast. And tonight we are sitting here with myself, Tom James. We got Howard and William O'Neill in Alabama. Hello, fellas.
How's it going?
We got Al, Big Al's in Alabama as well. How are you, sir?
Doing good.
And Casey is in Illinois. We're gathering tonight. We thought maybe we might do a little introduction and do a little background explanation. If you don't know who we are, maybe a little bit about us, how we all came together to be a part of this organization.
Tom James is.
And then we got a couple things on our mind to sort of carry us through this conversation about things we've got planned to do this spring. And but I thought maybe we'd start out by, Howard, can you give us some background on the Management Advantage? Go all the way back to when Chuck and Casey were first starting out, and Casey can introduce or interject some things as he sees fit. But let's talk about how you guys became to be a part and owning the business now.
Yeah, so I guess I got involved. I spent 2011, Casey, 2012, something like that. I was actually watching the Outdoor Channel, and Chuck was doing a show, and I'm sure Casey was filming. Well, 100% sure Casey was filming at that time. And they were doing the show, and Chuck's number popped up, and I called him just to get his advice on something. And he called me back about 10 minutes later. We set up a time to meet and met at our place down in Selma. Well, Camden, Portland Landing, Menor, around in that area. And things just kind of took off from there. Chuck was on the verge of starting, I guess, the digital at that time. That was the last season of the Outdoor Channel. And as it went on, and I just kind of got involved, and one thing led to another, and I came in and purchased Chuck's partner out, and as time went on and Chuck got more involved with the state and just some things like that, we decided it was a good move to take him out completely on the ownership side, and Casey bought into that as well at that time. And so Chuck's still a big part of TMA as much as he can be, but that's how I came to be where I'm at now. So, but Casey's been with Chuck 20 years now, isn't it, Casey?
This is my 20th year.
Yeah. So,
met Chuck on a whitetail hunt up here in Illinois, and I actually got a call from a guy, said they needed a camera guy, and I was in a combine cutting beans. I told him no, and got home that night, and mom and dad and the guy that I was working for actually said, you might want to go do that. And so I went and filmed him for a week. Didn't kill a deer. We had a good time, and then about 2 weeks later, he offered me a full-time job, and I packed my bags and away I went. So 20 years ago, about a month ago. So,
and now you've been around for day one. How long have you worked up?
Yeah, I go back with Chuck all the way back to the CNS Wildlife Services era in 1997. So that's 28 years, if I'm doing public maths correct.
And Tom,
how long did you live with Chuck before you moved back to Illinois?
I lived down there for about 10 years. I think it was about 10 years. I don't remember the exact date, but I ended up meeting my wife now, and we got married, and now we live, up here in Illinois, and everything's digital now, and we're traveling. We're doing projects kind of all over the place. So, you can kind of do this from anywhere. So, as evidenced by what we're doing today, we're all over the map. So, pretty cool.
And Tom, how did you come along?
Oh, I was hitchhiking down a highway one time. And, we my wife and I.
Surprised me, however, that's not true.
Yeah. It's well true, right?
And was it in that?
We've got some good stories interwoven through this whole relationship. I mean, we could probably sell a book if we decided to sit down and write it all out fact by fact. But I came on the scene, I think it was about 2003 or 4. My my wife and I brought the Ferminator food plot implement to the wildlife industry, and we started marketing it through a lot of the big trade shows. And then we were advertising in Deer and Deer Hunting magazine, a little bit in North American Whitetail, and a few other publications here and there when I could afford to do it, which was not easy. But I also felt like at the time I wanted to sort of attach myself to or be associated with a reputable food plot seed brand. And at the time, Mossy Oak was, Biologic was huge. Grant Woods just had come out with his partnership with Toxie and released the whole Biologic line of the technology of taking New Zealand seed varieties that were used to put antlers and protein and meat on the red deer. They use it as they raise them as a commodity over there, much like we raise beef cattle here. So they're putting on pounds and inches of antler through these various seed cultivars. So Grant thought it was a good idea to bring those over and introduce them into the food plot industry here in the wild and see what they would do for the whitetail deer. Food plotting wasn't brand new then, but it was still on a huge growth spurt, the kind of leading edge of that stuff. And it just has exploded since then. But I actually became a Biologic dealer, and those guys, we never really did anything formally together, but they liked what I was doing with the implement. We were selling seed at shows and doing some branding for them while we were out and about. And it wasn't long thereafter that the Management Advantage was also doing some sponsorship stuff with Biologic. And the opportunity came along for me to connect with Casey and Chuck through Bobby Cole with Biologic to do a sort of a product or a property spotlight, kind of like a testimonial of what has Biologic seed done on your property, and those guys came by and I remember Chuck standing there in the aisle in front of my booth with Bobby Cole, and I thought, man, this guy just absolutely hates me already. He's giving me the dirtiest looks, just staring a hole through me. And I soon found out that was just Chuck's mannerisms. You had to just come to learn him a little bit. But from there, it seemed like we did that segment together, filmed some stuff about me on my little small property here in Indiana. And we became instant friends.
Come Lauren kill our first turkey on that trip, I think.
Yeah. We I started doing some stuff with them as I could with the Ferminator and advertising and trying to sponsor the Management Advantage as well. But I'll tell you what, man, as a poor boy with very little, trying to grow a business and sinking every penny I had into building machines and putting every penny I had back into it, it was hard to do. But those guys put up with me and my little meager abilities to do any sponsorship with them. But we just hit it off great. And I just think it gelled a partnership and a friendship that is still strong today. And, man, we have filmed we've done so many trips together. We've done so much in terms of teaching people what we have learned through trial and error. You hear us say it all the time. We don't say this is the only way or the highway. We say it's the way that we've done it and it works for us. And
say that one more time.
It's not just our way or the highway. There are multiple ways of doing things, and we're not saying we know every little aspect of it. But if it works for me and I have tried things that didn't work, I'm going to tell you so you can avoid the headaches and frustrations of learning those bad ways or those unsuccessful ways before you spend time and years lost doing that. So we just feel like we talk about what we learn by doing it. And if it works and we don't really beat our chest about it. We just say, check it out, guys. This worked for me. And here's how I did it, A, B, C, and D. And we've always had that approach, I think. And I think people appreciate that.
Yeah. That's what attracted me to Chuck and Casey is the way they did it, and a lot of the show that they actually did, was planting soybeans in Alabama. And I'm like, they're doing it exactly the same way that I did it, and the reason I called was just, hey, I wanted somebody to tell me I was doing it right, I guess. But that's the one thing that, it's not, hey, you've got to do it this way. You've got to have a Furminator, or man, if you just go make some soil disturbance and cover it up with pine top, like my granddaddy taught me how to do, and that works for you. That's the way. That's the way I like it. So I appreciate you saying that, and that's kind of been my mantra, and I think TMA's mantra, over the years, and that's what attracted me to Chuck and Casey to begin with.
If I may add this before you move on, as a manufacturer or a product owner, you have to understand what we call soft selling or product placement because of utilization and trust. If you're a product manufacturer or an inventor, or you own a service or something, and you want the used car salesman pitch of, you got to have this to do this, and you're never going to be successful, and I carry one wherever I go. That's not the way this operation works. It's, first of all, the product has to work. You have to want to use it your own self, even if a camera wasn't running on you, and you have to believe in it. And you're going to see Casey planting stuff, and me and you guys down south, and you're going to see us planting things and using certain tree stands or using products and herbicides and whatever techniques because we use them. And we're not going to, I don't know, we kind of all laugh and make fun a little bit about, the grip and grin, and thank God I was using that 180 grain shaft and a 220 grain blah, blah head, and launched by the bow projector, throwing the projectile at 355 feet per second because it's a 2025 X model of this, and my camo and this color kept me from being seen with the wary eye of the whitetail. And that's out there, and we understand that that's the modus operandi of some people, but that's just not who we are. Matter of fact, you'll be lucky if you hear us even say a product name. We might talk about it, but you're going to see it being used, and you're going to see it providing the results. So we feel like those things speak for themselves. And it was never really even a conscious decision to Casey never said, we're not going to mention the Furminator 5 times in the show because they're just going to see it in the dirt. It just that worked that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's all kind of produced around what I like and don't like to see on outdoor television. And you guys are kind of all on the same boat. I mean, I don't watch outdoor television anymore. I'm not afraid to admit it. But back when I did, and when I was learning the production side of things, I was like, I'm not doing that, and I'm not doing that. We got to figure out how to make it look like this. And I think we've done a good job of doing that, over the years, and just soft sell it as much as we can, and just be down to earth and average guys. And that's really what we are. I mean, we're not a group of guys that has a bunch of money that just want to see themselves on TV. That's not what we are. I can guarantee you that.
Sometimes we just have to settle for things, don't we, William?
Yep, that's right. That's right. No, it is. When me and Dad were watching that, I finally get what you're saying. Yeah, we settle. That's a backstory to that one. But no, me and Dad got the old TMA videos digitized, and we watched the first video, and it was Chuck talking about planting soybeans. And he literally said, this is the way we're doing it today. But if your soil condition is this, do it this way. And if that doesn't work for you, you don't have that implement, do it this way. And that's what I love about Chuck and everything that y'all done just said. So it's good to see that model hasn't changed in 20 years.
Absolutely.
Don't let it.
Well, Tom, I know that you've got some pretty interesting stuff going on in your life. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. There was something else I'm going to spring on you guys tonight that has come into pass, but I hadn't even shared it with any of you yet. So I'm excited to talk about that too. But, so Project 17 is in, 6 years now since it was first initiated, going into the 6th year. And, we did that really aggressive timber harvest on just about all of my acreage this last March or February, March, and wrapped it up in early April. So we have seen a tremendous response in the timber from that. But one of the things that's always bugged me a little bit is I've had little pockets, some hot spots of invasive species. And I've also had an ongoing plan for my timber stand improvement work as we've added these my property is a compilation of 3 or 4 different acquired sales over a period of time. We didn't buy it all at the same time, and you guys have followed along. It's been a progression of adding more acres on. So a lot of that stuff is different age class. A lot of it's been managed at different times, and the original acreage, which was just 58 acres, was managed pretty intensively, and then the rest of it may have had zero exposure to TSI work yet. So I caught wind. I knew about the program, but I really had never pursued it just because I kind of had a fear of red tape and applications and those kinds of things. But a good buddy of mine, Jamie Turpin, had learned the ropes very well and exercised it on his property through an intense TSI and invasive species management process. And he's the one that encouraged me to reach out and check into it. But I applied for the EQIP program, Environmental Quality Improvement Program, for my property. And it was through my local NRCS office, through the district forester, who had to come out and meet with me and walk my property. And our place was marked for timber harvest, but had not yet begun. He looked at everything that I had. He was looking at my goals, and he said, you would probably qualify for TSI program for sure. You've got a zone of invasive species. I'm going to measure that, and we can put it on a scale of relevance. And he asked me what else I was planning on doing. I told him I was planning a hard and soft mass fruit orchard with some shrubs in it, some wildlife shrubs. I'm going to do some feather edging in a couple other spots. Probably going to include some low prairie with forbs and wildflowers and some pollinators in that same orchard area. So lo and behold, I had 3 or 4 different classes of work that I was going to do anyway, that I'm planning on doing anyway. So the next thing I know, that district forester sent me his summary, told me that I would qualify for these different things and to take it up with the office there, the FSA office in my county, the NRCS office, and he connected me with them. I filled out the application. I got approved for all of those work programs. What that means is I'm going to get subsidized. I'm going to get paid, reimbursed for a lot of those, what I would be spending on those projects anyway. So when I go to buy my trees for that orchard, there's going to be 46 or so trees of apples and early and late apples, early and late pears, some persimmons, some chestnuts, and a whole variety of shrubs that are going to go in there. Those are going to be more than paid for with that check. I haven't gotten my first payment yet. That comes in year 2, but I've got 3 years to complete this scope of work. If I don't do it, they're going to come out and they're going to check on me and check the progress of these 3 or 4 contracts that I've got. And if I don't fulfill my end of the bargain, I'm going to have to pay that money back, and I lose getting penalized for that. But you guys know we're all cut of that same work cloth, man. You give us something to do, and we're going to be on our property doing it all the time anyway. But that just gives me the extra incentive to really want to kick it in the butt and get that TSI work done. I made a huge dent in the autumn olive and bush honeysuckle stuff and multiflora rose are my 3 primary issues as far as invasives go. But I'm going to really hammer it again this spring and early summer as that stuff starts to green back up and I see what I didn't quite get to yet. Backpack sprayers and a big tank sprayer on the tractor. And we're just in there just marching all over that area and getting it knocked out. But the money's nice. And I would encourage people, if you've never checked into it, the county, just like everything else, there's available money from the farm bill, and every county is going to be different. Depends on how many people apply and what sort of how your work ranks in the importance of what they want to emphasize in that area or that particular county. If you're lacking in pollinators, or you're lacking in warm season grasses, or you're lacking it, then they're going to probably, those would rank higher in the scale when they assess whether or not you're going to get approved. But I can tell you, TSI and invasive species control is big on their importance ratings across the country. That's pretty important stuff. So,
Common, if and when you can lay out a program where you're starting with your greatest need or the biggest hole in your bucket and working toward the top, that is extremely appealing to NRCS, where you can lay out that segregated plan, multi-year plan.
Yeah. Good point. And something else that they'll look at sometimes too is what drainage you're in, as far as, like, I'm on Raccoon Creek and it feeds into the Wabash River, and that drainage has its own scale of, they might see a need for more filter strips or erosion control measures, different things. So all that stuff goes into a database, and they'll score your application based on the need for that particular area. But I'm not too shy to tell you, I'm going to get like $23,000 in the contract.
Wow.
I can spend that money however I want. I could go out and buy a brand new side by side if I want to. They don't care,
As long as
because they know I'm spending the money. I will have spent the money one way or the other out of my pocket to complete those programs. If I'm buying my chainsaw equipment and my fuel and all the herbicides, the forestry herbicides that I'm going to be using, that's going to take money. And I'm either spending it out of my own pocket or out of that check that I get. So I'm buying those trees and shrubs that I talked about, and I'm going to be putting protective cage fences around them, 5-foot tall welded wire and steel fence posts. So all that stuff's going to cost money to do, or to do it with. And then the materials that I'm going to buy aren't cheap. You guys know triclopyr and glyphosate and all that stuff adds up over time. And it's a really cool program to help you. I think a lot of people would look at it as a moneymaker, but if you were really to divide out your hours and time and fuel and expenses, you would probably find that you're not making as much as it sounds like on the front end of it. But nonetheless, we're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
You're just getting
But it's an investment too. You're making your property better. So in the long run, if you go and sell it, it's what you've done so that's how I see it, at least.
Absolutely right. So that's part of my story. I've got one more thing I want to tell you, but I need to take a break because I don't want this to be all about Tom. I want to hear Al talk a little bit. I want to hear a lot of it. I want to hear Casey too, get caught up, because it's been a while since we've all been together.
Yeah, it has. I don't even know what the date is. What is the date today?
The 21st of
21st.
January.
21st of January. So I'm 3 days away from making a 1,500-mile drive to South Texas. I've been doing it for about 14 years. I think Tom actually went with me the first year I went down there. We've got a big ranch down there that we implement a very aggressive trapping program on, and I'm pretty excited about it. I get excited every year. I've already been doing some prep work. A lot of prep work. It's taken.
Yeah. How many sets do you have? How many are you taking? What's your rundown?
Okay.
Don't ask.
I normally don't even count, but I was
about to say, do you know?
I was real curious the other day, so I separated out every trap by the model number, the size, everything, had it all set out, and washed them, dyed them, waxed them, sitting in buckets outside airing out right now. I got 162 footholds that I'm going to take with me, and I think I've got 12 dozen snares that are going to go with me, and then about 12 dozen dog-proof coon traps as well. So we're going to be running.
Wow.
It's going to be a 14-day trip. Taking my brother and my buddy Brian Kenning, and we do nothing but trap cats, coyotes, raccoons. If you're a predator and in my way, I wouldn't want to be there, because we get mad at them, and I'm pretty excited about it. If you can't tell, I'm ready to get in the truck and go right now. It's
That's awesome.
It's one of those trips that I think I told Al this the other day. I said I feel more alive in the 2 weeks that I go down there and do this than any other time in my life. Just because you're there, you're in tune with it. You don't have anything else to do but kill predators, and we love it. So tis the season. A lot of deer seasons are closing. So we try to get our trapping programs in. You only have so many days between deer season and turkey season. We try to get as many days in the field trapping this time of year as we can. So this is our first trip of the year. I know Al's start getting ready, getting geared up. He's already been doing a little bit of trapping on some other properties here lately, but so we're going to start with Texas and move east from there. So got a lot of work to do, and I'll probably lose about 15 pounds, which won't hurt anything.
So Al, what have you got going on?
Well, Casey alluded to it. I mean, in Alabama, we're in the middle of the rut, and I have not wanted to venture far away from the house. So I've just been doing those small jobs, not quite critter getter, but 200 acres here, 150 there, 40 here, 40 there on beavers, but trapping coyote, beaver, coyote, coons, just small jobs. I've got a 20,000 acre job that I'll run for 21 days in Alabama, West Alabama, and then Cedar Heights and whatever else we put together around Cedar Heights, Samwood. But yeah,
one guy I've already got him on board. Probably gonna get the other one in the next week or so.
Okay.
William, remind me.
About a week and a half away from starting the process that Casey's just finished in pressure washing, cleaning, dyeing, waxing, boxing, getting everything ready, function testing, every trap
is key on trips like that.
Do what?
Organization is key on trips.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think Casey was the author of this. I think Robert Waddell was. But the first big job I worked, Tom had trapped this place. Casey had trapped this place. Tom and Casey had trapped this place. And when the first time that Casey came down to help me, we were trapping 14,000, and he helped me get everything set. And Casey made the comment, every 60 seconds that I can save at a particular trap location, based off the numbers of acres and the numbers of traps, I could save myself as much as 2.5 hours in a single day. So when you start talking about trying to save 60 seconds, every time you have to walk from the buggy to the trap set, every time you have to go get something that you didn't have in your bucket, or just that organization, having those trap chains cut short, just having every trap function tested, all those little things make seconds, and those seconds make minutes, and those minutes make hours.
If you got 162 trap locations in the ground, 1 minute off each one of those,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's why I hire you.
Well, Alex, you got to put the blinders on. Don't look over here. Don't look.
That's it.
Straightforwards. Here we go.
Yeah, I've got to get my 6. Waxed and dyed my 12 dog crews for our property here in town, but I enjoy it. I didn't get into it until last year. I've watched y'all do it for years, and y'all trapped our place forever, and I finally started to do it. And it's addicting. I understand why you do it.
It's very addicting. You're not.
Well, that 14,000 is turning into 20,000 and a 21-day job.
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot.
And I get called all the time to come trap places. I send everybody to Al anymore because he's got more time than I have. I got 2 little girls on the ground, and got to keep producing shows and flying the drone and doing all kinds of stuff. I just can't be gone as much as I used to. I used to leave January 1st, and I wouldn't come home until middle of April. I would just go from job to job to job, and it was the gauntlet. And then I would stay home until about July the 1st, and I would leave again from July 1st until right around the 1st of October. And you just can't do it with a family like that. I mean, it's a bachelor job or retired job, Al's getting dang good at it, and it's a lot of time away from home, but it's a labor of love. A labor of love.
But even with a retired job, my wife is like, "Hey, when you gonna be home?" But
Yeah.
I've only got in the South, so Alabama's deer season runs till the 10th of February, and Alabama's turkey season comes in around the 25th of March. So that is a very finite number, and for the vast majority of the landowners, they don't want you on the property during deer season or especially during turkey season. So there's only so many jobs that I can do.
Well, I hope Dee Dee doesn't hear that when y'all say you're gone for 6 months, because she'll be making me get into trapping. And
I got some jobs I could send you on.
yeah, you don't want me doing it. So
You guys go
Yeah, I
north
turned
and
down
east
one,
now and head south. Yeah.
I turned down one today. I'll be glad to give you.
no, I'm good. I've got more irons in the fire than I can handle myself. So the one thing, kind of on a sad note, I know y'all seen, people that's watched the show over the years, got a property called Samwood Farms, and we'll get into more of that, how Samwood and Cedar Heights ties in together. But my father-in-law bought into that, our family, I guess, 15, 16 years ago, maybe longer than that. Can't remember exactly.
It was 15. We had the cabin for 15 years.
Yeah, the cabin for 15 years. So we'd been in part of Samwood for 3 or 4 years after that, and we're having a lodge built. It's basically a double wide trailer, but it was custom built. It had 7 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. So it's hard to believe that a double wide trailer could have that much. Now the bedrooms were, you couldn't barely turn around in them, but it was good for us. But the last thing he was doing before he died, he was talking to the guy that was building it, and it was literally, he was riding down the road and said, "Hey, hold on just a second," and had a massive heart attack driving down the road, and so he never got to see it. And about 2 weeks ago, my brother-in-law was down there, and something happened. Not sure exactly what happened, but some of our other buddies looked up, and it was on fire. And thankfully got Dale out, got some belongings out of the house, but it burned flat to the ground. So pretty much
Devastating.
Yeah, it was. You go back now and there's nothing there but a few pieces of tin and the iron beams that the trailer was sitting on. So that's stuff like that happens. So you talk about family, that was a devastating thing for William, and my other nieces and nephews. That's all they ever knew, hunting in a place like that, and now it's gone. So Tom, I don't know. Al, I don't know where. I guess we're gonna go down to Fish Guts and stay. We got a bed down there, so which is another place. Actually, in all this, with the family growing bigger, I had actually purchased a house down on White Oak Creek, just right around the corner, and just so we'd all have a place to lay our heads down. Family's gotten so big that we need to do that. So it was kind of a God thing when you sit there and, I don't know why stuff like that happens, but the good Lord knows the reason. And so now we're going from that to everybody staying at our house, and glad to have them, and glad that Dale got out. But that's a sad thing. And, I've had a midlife crisis and got actually back into the fire service, went to work today for one of our local fire departments, and they pulled up on the fire truck, knew the fire chief there, didn't know that I knew him, but when he got out of the truck, and so I actually didn't put it out by any means, because you're in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, and rural fire services just like all over the country are suffering. And he said, "Man, I got 1,000 gallons of water and don't know if anybody else is going to show up." So it was me, him, and one other guy, and I put on his coat and helmet and started spraying water and saved the garage. So, Al, you got a couple traps in there that I saved, but in the garage, but everything else was a total loss. So kind of a sad time, but
Still got the black coyote.
Save the coyote. Yeah.
He was in the garage freezer.
Garage freezer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got plans to rebuild?
So Dale,
I'll let you tell that.
So
Go ahead.
Dale has actually bought 2 lots down there. So you remember, Casey, and this doesn't mean anything to anybody other than Casey, but you remember Dennis Adams, Casey? Well, he had where I don't know if y'all went to his place.
I trapped it. Well,
yeah,
we both trapped it.
His old lodge is right across the slough from where we are, and that's probably a 45-minute drive from it. But you come off the Alabama River into White Oak Creek and got a big slough, and there was a guy there that had a house that Clay found back in July, and we bought it, and there was two other lots that was there. So Dale actually got in touch with the landowner, my brother-in-law, and he bought 2 of those, and he's gonna build a house there. So we're still gonna have a little family compound, and we can get in our buggies, and it's about a 5-minute ride.
Drive. It's not bad.
Cedar Heights. So if we go hunt Samwood, we'll have to load the buggies up on the trailer. But other than that, we'll be right there. So not
Because of that being a God thing, we all work together, and now we're back together, and there's a possibility that we could be together forever. And it was a big conversation of, all right, well, everybody's going to die at some point. What's going to happen when, my brother's kids and my cousin's kids and my future kids all, in 15, 20 years? And so, boy,
when
I'm not saying you're dead in 15, 20 years. I'm saying I might have a kid in 15 or 20 years.
that's what I'm killing me off already.
Hey,
We're dating.
nah, not at all.
So, but that's our plan. Where like Al said, still got I guess about 3 weeks of season left down there. We're going to go down there and see if we can shoot some poor defenseless deer.
On that drop pine deer.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Yeah, nobody's seen him in daylight, and he shows up on the camera
Once every 3 or 4 weeks.
Staying in the core area, not probably half a mile square, and but he shows up, once every 4 or 5 days, and not on the same camera.
I think it's more than that.
So, and I'm sure we probably won't see him with the rut getting kicked off. He's going, he's not.
There's no telling where that joker's at right now.
So,
Let's wide
a rut.
place
Al, you just killed a decent buck, didn't you?
yesterday.
Good
That's
deal.
Actually, I saw a 1.5-year-old deer walking left to right, hunting big timber, no feeder, no food plotting, just big timber, and on the edge of a swamp. And I look up and I see this doe running, and she's running wide open. And here comes a buck, and I thought I recognized the deer off trail cam pictures. He's outside his ears, and he's running so fast. The only thing I can do is put the scope on a hole and project the hole he's going to run into, and let him run into it. And that's exactly what happened. And
Good deal.
I actually shooting suppressed. The doe stopped, and the buck wasn't chasing her anymore. She walked off. The little 1.5-year-old took off chasing the doe for a little bit, and then the two of them just kind of walked off. And just shooting downhill next to a swamp, and never heard an echo.
wow, that's cool.
It is.
William, you killed a deer not too long
I
ago.
did.
Yeah, big wide.
3 weeks ago, and it was kind of the same thing as Mr. Al's. I was in a hardwood bottom, like that ladder stand, and heard him walk down a hill in front of me, and he walked off, and then I heard another. I knew it had to be a buck by the way that he's walking, and he was chasing a doe. And about that time, I look back over, and this old mature buck comes back. He fights him. He finally walks off, runs him back up the hill or whatever. Another buck comes back down the other side of the hill. They fight. So I got to see one buck fight 2 separate bucks. And then he chased that doe around a little bit. And then he finally jumped off down into a creek. And when he jumped down that creek, it looked like a horse. I mean, his whole body moved.
He was a big deer for Alabama, big body deer.
Yeah. Casey's going to laugh when I say his weight. He weighed 206 pounds. I'm thinking he was 6 years old.
It's all real.
But
It's all around.
It was all relative.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking about how he, you know, like you said, you field dressed that buck in Illinois, and it was 230.
That was not field dressed.
He was 280.
230 was
He was
283.
280.
goodness gracious.
Yeah, that deer
That's insane.
was 9.5 years old, according to what we could put together with the trail camera pictures. Wow.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
So, what we'll get into the weeds on this a little bit. So we just produced the part 1 for this show. But speaking of weights of deer, that deer come off of our brand new farm me and Louie bought this year, and we'll have to have Louie on here sometime, and we can kind of talk about a piece of land that we bought. But we bought 48.5 acres, and this is the first deer that we killed off of it. And I mean, look at the just character. But this deer,
Wow.
we don't know how old he was because first year on the property. I think he was extremely old. I'm actually probably gonna send his front teeth off for some annuali, but that deer, field dressed, weighed 141 pounds. The lightest deer I've ever seen.
Wow.
But he had every characteristic of an old deer, like almost on the backside of his life's bell curve. Kind of like just like an old man where they get the no acetol syndrome. He kind of had that going on, and it was late rut when they killed him. But yeah, that was pretty cool. My biggest deer ever. He scored right around 183. There's one point on here I need to talk to you about, Tom, that I couldn't figure out whether or not it needed scored or not. But pretty cool. I'm still pretty excited.
That's awesome.
He lives right here with me when I'm sitting at my desk where I do all my video editing and everything. So he lays right here, and when I get bored, I just pick him up and look at him.
I would too. I wouldn't put him down.
But yeah, we just produced the first show off of this farm, of us buying it, setting it up, planting the food plots, and of course we're into part 2 now where it's hunting season. So that one's coming out next Wednesday.
Cool.
So yeah,
Casey, you gonna be able to bring him to Alabama when you come?
I'll have to call the taxidermist, but I told him sometime it'll either be February or September,
Gotcha.
because that's when I'll come down to trap, and then I'm sure we'll be down to film projects at Cedar Heights as well. So I'll bring him down sooner or later.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes, sir. Yep. But
Bad eye buck.
Mm-hmm.
Zach killed a good deer on us again this year. Same tree, almost the same day as last year by himself. He did the exact same thing, the poor guy with his camera. The deer stepped out of the frame when he released the arrow. The deer fell nearly within spitting distance from the tree, exactly like the buck did last year, just on the other side. I don't know what he does, but he shoots them and they fall as if they got knocked over with a 300 Win Mag right there with the bow. This time though, breaks my heart because same as last year, he called me and texted me. I got out of my tree. Last year I was just up at camp. This year I was hunting, so I climbed down. I even in the tree, I did just got a call from Zach. He's got a buck down, and man, I got all the way. We did a nice interview. He climbed down and talked about the shot, went over and recovered the deer and got a pick, went back to the camp, got the tractor and put him on the trailer and pulled him all the way back. A real pretty deer that we called, I don't know, this is going to sound a little odd. We called him Peavy. You guys know them logging tools that you got a handle. It's got like a C-shaped little piece on it with little knobs, and you grab the log and you roll it over when you're milling logs on the mill.
Yeah.
Well, that his main beam reminded me of that device, the steel piece of that log roller. And we looked it up online. I go, what the heck's one of those things called? I forget. Zach, we were sitting around the fire one night. He goes, it's called a peavy. I said, well, there you go. That's peavy. So
You know what we call those in Alabama?
what's that?
A log roller.
Log roller. That didn't quite sound as cool for a buck name, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was
We
super
get
proud.
very scientific in Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get Well, we hear it all the time. I can't believe you guys named your bucks. It's more than anything so we can keep
Yeah.
it straight, you know.
That's with my dad, because dad'll go hunting and he'll be like, I saw he was about this wide, he had 10 points. And I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, we've got 8 deer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right. It just, you can keep track of them. We had a weird name for this one. I named him Drippy.
Yeah.
Because it looked like
Perfect.
It looked like he dripped candle wax off of his main beam. And
That's perfect.
that was the only thing you could see when he walked up. You could see that part of it right there, and then he turned his head sideways, and you could see the.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is cool.
Every deer's kind of got their own little characteristic you can pick out, pick a name, and usually it sticks. And
Yeah,
everybody knows. I mean, usually within 2 seconds now, Dad can say, "I just saw, Cartman or whoever, whatever deer we end up naming. We all know exactly who it is." So
our method, Casey, is if we're looking at a picture of him and there's one little unique thing that stands out, it's the first thing that jumps. And usually the girls and Zach say it's up to me. That's usually the first thing that pops in my head, and we all call it that. And it's worked out well. Hopefully there won't be a time when we run out of names, that they'll keep popping up. But what I started to tell you a minute ago was that of all the days that camera decided to quit recording audio, it failed internally. All that stuff that we shot, or the follow-up, me talking in the camera before I climbed out of my stand, all of it's dead audio, no sound. I even ordered a new microphone for it. I talked to Blake, and I plugged a new microphone into those XLR jacks, on the side of that camera. Neither one of them worked. The new microphone didn't work, so it's an internal failure inside the camera. So time for Tom to get a new one.
You got Mike Minis or Mike 2s?
Yeah, Mic 1, Mic 2 XLR outputs on a top-mounted microphone, and it's the old camera that you gave me, Howard, that Blake, that you guys had used it. Yeah,
I'm talking about the DJI mic.
Oh.
Yeah, we just got those, but
got an extra set of them for you, Tom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Yeah, we got a little miscommunication in that order.
And
it's okay. To the benefit of the crowd.
Believe it or not. That's right. 100%.
Yeah. I don't know how to work them, so imagine that.
Ain't that bad.
The
Plug and play.
Yeah. Well, William's my plugger, so he has to figure it out and then tell me how to use it.
There you go. Something else I forgot to say you guys earlier, I'm really excited about doing on the farm this year. Gonna be the first time ever we've burned in the hardwoods on our property.
That is awesome.
We're going to implement some fire. I wanted to do it last year, but I did not want to do it before my buddy bought the trees. Well, he already paid me for a lot of the trees, and I wasn't about to run a fire through there until he got everything that was rightfully his out of there. So, open, clean slate, some tops on the ground, stuff like that. But the main objective with our fire is to reduce competitive, non-desirable hardwoods. Primarily, the old story where I live, it's beech and some other things like elm, and we got a lot of what we call spice bush here, which is a native shrub, but it can actually overtake an entire ridge, and no sun gets to the ground. It's like 4 to 6 feet tall at maturity, and it's like walking through a honeysuckle thicket. It's super, super thick, no sun. Eventually, the deer don't even like to go in it because it's so thick and dead in there. So, yeah.
So many folks are scared to death of burning in the hardwoods.
Yep.
Can you talk about the method?
Yeah. And I will tell you, I'm going to rely on a wildlife biologist buddy of mine that does a lot of timber prescription, rights to fire prescriptions and the plans. So I was going to talk to Casey. We'll get it on the calendar, but he did tell me, he said, burning in the timber is like, man, when all the right conditions come together, you got to kind of be ready to jump and run. You can't really. It could be great right now, and in 6 hours later, it could be terrible. So maybe with some good organization and communication, we can get some of that film this spring. But no, Al, it's all relative to you burn a fire burn is usually a very slow, cool fire. and it just creeps along. You're burning that dead litter, dried leaves and things on the ground, twigs, and that fire will run through there slowly. And it really does two great things. It removes that dead material on the forest floor, so you're going to get a great response of spring green up and the plants that respond from the soil warming up. And secondarily, it will suppress species that don't like the heat. Consequently, oaks love heat. They're actually a fire managed species. So we're trying to promote more oak regeneration in our hardwoods here, because a lot of the Indiana I think in the Midwest and in country in general, woods get high graded or they get completely ignored. And the shade species, the shade tolerant species, eventually work their way into the dominance, and they choke out the desirable hardwoods that love sun. And oaks and hickories love sun, and beech and maple here in the Midwest love shade. So those two are always fighting against each other. If you leave your woods untouched, the beech and maple will win eventually. And so your oaks are struggling. So it requires a fire break, and we're just going to do that with backpack blowers. Al, we're going to walk around the perimeter of a ridge, and we're going to be careful how we burn the fire into the timber. If you burn up a slope, there's the chances of the flames lapping up a little higher on some of your trees. So you always kind of want to burn down the slope. Obviously, wind direction and the humidity are the biggest factors, but a good fire break and taking off small chunks at a time. You don't have to burn 20 acres at a time. You can burn a couple and just do it nice and slow until you get, not that you would ever get cocky, but as you get more confident with your ability to manage a fire. But it is important to let your local fire department know, and somebody to have on hand that has their fire burn license. My son-in-law, Zach, does. And between him and my buddy, Pat, he's going to help write the burn plan for me and we're just going to dot all the I's and cross the T's and make sure that we're good to go.
So many folks have heard horror stories of burning hardwoods and creating voids at the base of the tree cavity for nest predators. And that is a product of burning too hot and at the wrong time.
Right. We will be burning in March. Again, you guys know what the March woods or well, maybe you guys, but Casey and I up here in the Midwest in March, you can have a sunny day and the leaves will start to dry out and they'll actually start to blow around just a little bit. But the very next day you have a light rain and you may have leaves this thick on the forest floor and it might be dry on the top inch or two, but then it's completely saturated wet down the bottom. So it does take several good drying days with some breeze on it and some low humidity to start to dry that stuff out to where it will carry a fire. But then the day of your burn, you don't want it really, really super low humidity. You want just the right amount. You want a manageable wind. He told me the other day, he said, it's kind of like the days that you'd be scared to light your warm season grass stand on fire because those are the ideal days to burn the timber. Because you do need a little bit of that extra oxygen flow and wind speed to carry that and to keep that heat going. But even at that, it's a slow creeping, relatively cool fire. So we're going to suppress our spice bush and some of the other species that I don't want in there. Of course, I'm herbicide spraying a lot of that stuff in the back, but the idea is to knock out some beech and spice bush and some elm and some hackberry and soft maple and encourage the oaks that we've got regenerating in there. We've got sunlight now over the vast majority of the farm, and we left a lot of good seed trees in there. So there's white oaks, red oaks, chinkapin, swamp white oak, chestnut oak, black oak, bur oak, and a few others in there, species. But that's what I would really like to see my property over the future begin to show more of a dominance of those species.
Yeah.
So,
Well, go ahead, Casey.
maybe you can tell me if this is true or not, but a long time ago I had somebody tell me that, fire in the timber creates really good oak regeneration. And one of the main factors to that, he also told me that blue jays plant most of the regenerating oaks, typically white oaks. But you add a fire into it, and they typically go and replant those more in an area that's had fire. Is that true?
Now, I'm going to have to defer because as much as I've done in the Midwest and I've burned native stands and grasses for a couple decades now, this will be my first hardwood burn. I'm still a novice at it, and I'm not ashamed to say that, but I have heard that the birds do more of the tree planting. One would think that the squirrels do, but I think a combination of it does make sense to me that if the leaf litter is gone, they're not just burying that acorn in the leaves, they're actually getting it down into a couple inches of soil and packing it in. To me, it stands to reason of just the mechanics of it. They're not planting it in rotting leaves in the very shallow part of the soil. They're actually getting it down where the deer's not going to pick it up and some other creatures aren't going to find it. If you guys have ever tried to propagate oak trees, you can go out under an oak that's dropped a ton of acorns that the wildlife haven't picked up yet. You get off into February, March, and start looking around. Those things are all over the ground, sending out those little radicals out the end of it. And those things are trying to do that everywhere. So an oak can actually sprout and get going on its own if it's planted on top. They're just laying on top of the soil, but its odds of survivability are pretty low just to not get eaten by something.
Times you see a squirrel run through the woods, he goes,
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I've seen those nuts and acorns you talk about in the back of my truck.
Yeah.
It's just, of course they're not going to make it all, but it's like that. Just like you see, when you bust a bag of seed, when you go and plant and you look up, 2 weeks later and there's, little wheat and oats and a little bit of clover, and you think, man, I need that in my green field.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's in your driveway in a rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny, how it just kind of changed. Somebody was was listening to a podcast and was talking about growing clover. And I said, the best way to grow clover is either is put a baseball field on it, because that clover will grow in a baseball field like nobody's business, and you can't get it out, and
Right.
It's unbelievable. So
try to have a nice yard.
Yeah, try to have a nice yard, and
Well, one more thing from me, and I'll quit yakking. But been talking about this for way, 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 way too long. Casey's heard me say it 100 times, if not more. But we're finally going to build our cabin on the property this year.
Awesome!
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Starting in the spring. I got a real quick little side story to tell you. The bad part, my dad passed away in mid-October, had dementia. My dad just turned 80 years old. So it wasn't like it was a sudden thing. We knew it was coming. We were preparing for it. At the same time, it's never easy to lose a parent. I love my dad immensely. We didn't have the closest relationship because he did hunt with me and he did fish with me because he knew it was important to me. He loved the outdoors, but he just really wasn't a very avid hunter and land manager and that kind of thing. But he supported whatever I did wholeheartedly. He loved my daughters, unconditionally. And he loved that we had our farm and that we enjoyed going out on the land. So through a blessing of my brother and I, we each receive an inheritance from my dad. And we're going to take that, and that's going to help enable us to build this cabin up on the hill. And I'm going to put a plaque over the door that says Grandpa James's cabin, so in honor of my dad. But the side story I was going to tell you is about 5 or 6 years ago, I helped a couple that had called me about possibly selling a 40-acre tract of theirs, and I met them out there that day. Walked around. They had a really cool pond, and they had a pole barn, and I talked about the range of prices of what land was selling for at that time, and we got to talking, and we hit it off great. And I started telling them about my property, and I wasn't but maybe 45 minutes north of them. One thing led to another. They said, well, do you have a place to stay on there? And I said, no, not yet. I'm dreaming of a cabin. So one of these days, I'm going to have one of those Appalachian style cabins, like a 30 by 40 or so. And it's going to have a 3-bedroom, 2 in the bottom, 1 in the top, a big open concept. I said, it's going to have the square rectangular logs, and it's going to have the dovetail overlapping corners, and it's going to have a big covered porch. and that's my dream cabin. And the gentleman, he said, "You want to see something?" And we walked just 50 yards across the driveway. And he opened up the pole barn door, and there in his barn on pallets was a 2,000 square foot log cabin, exactly as I just described, to the T's.
Wow.
I'm telling you, the corner details, the upstairs master, the 2 bedrooms down, the open loft, everything like I said. And he said, "You know what? I might just sell you that." He said, "We bought that from a cabin company in Tennessee, and we've never built it. It's all brand new, wrapped up on pallets in there." Holy crap, man. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it, and, but then a short time later, I had the opportunity to add more acres onto the property. So that's what I did. Would you believe that just after Dad passed away in December, I contacted those folks and I said, "Linda, Steve, you may not remember me." She knew right away. She said, "I remember you, and how you been?" And I said, "This is a long shot, I know, but I just got to ask, is there any way in the world that you guys still have that cabin package? And if you did, is there any chance you'd still sell it to me?" And she said, "The answer is yes and yes."
Wow. How about that?
Wow. Fine intervention. Talk about it.
That's right.
And I tell you, I can't believe it. It's just one of those things that gives you chills, like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And because I've kept a picture of that cabin in my desk drawer. I've got it saved in my phone. Anytime I've ever even looked at other cabin packages, I always compare it to that, and lo and behold, they still have it and they're willing to sell it to me. And the price that they gave me back then was about 2/3 of what they paid for it. It's brand new, and it's a good buy. It's a super good deal for me. It's going to help them out because they just decided not to do it. They were getting up in their age and they decided not to do it. But I'm actually Laura and I are meeting with them next Monday to do the deal. And then I can finally get my hands on the prints and start getting some quotes on the foundation and all that kind of stuff and start moving forward. So that's really exciting.
That is.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to maybe try to film putting the cabin up.
Well, I wanted to say, how cool would that be? Because I think a lot of people consider doing it and they just don't know what's all involved, and maybe we do a little time lapse, or I could be out there every few days, and maybe we could even do a camera doing,
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Would be.
That'd be awesome.
Would be cool.
Log cabin build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Congratulations. That is really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
we're hoping that we can have Christmas at the cabin next December.
Yeah. No, see, that's cool. That's one thing. And we talked about right after the house burned down, and I guess it was New Year's night, wasn't it, William?
Yeah. What?
New Year's Eve? It was New Year's Eve.
It was the Saturday before.
Yeah,
That's
right.
Saturday before. In between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, so
The
Dale
cabin burned down.
and his wife Julie were actually over at our place, and we were talking about what we were going to do, and that's kind of one thing, how we were going to set it out. And I told him, I said, "Man, I've always, in case he, out at Texas, how the guy's got his kitchen and his eating area where we sat."
Yep.
That's what I said.
Cafeteria deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, "Man, I've always wanted something like that with a big fire pit." Now, when I say a fire pit, where we go out to duck hunting, they've got it's a propane tank, the end of a propane tank. I mean, it's huge. It's 6 foot across, so it's not your ordinary fire pit. But we've always liked that, hung out right there. So I said that's going to be one of the things that. So I've got a lot in between Dale when I bought my house. So I think I'm going to build us a kitchen and
Nice.
a fire pit area right there, so we could all be together. And then we used to have Thanksgiving down at Samwood, and just as as your family grows. And Tom, you're fixing to get into that. You'll realize that family's growing, and it's harder to get everybody together. And
Oh yeah.
you start planning in October for what's going to happen for Christmas Eve, and so it, then. And you'll be like me. You'll just sit back and go, "Hey, tell me where I need to be when."
Right.
Growing the camper.
Yeah.
Well, we have outgrown the camper. We have kind of sort of been in overspill mode for the last 2 years, and
Yeah.
Zach and Morgan bought a pop-up camper and parked it right next to ours. And then Zach and Lauren, when they would come, they'd bring a camper. We'd have 3 campers up there on the hill, and now we're going to have this. And I'm thinking of having a little machine shed across the way where we can keep our equipment. It might even put a little living quarters in one edge of that just for overflow, where we can put a few extra bunk beds or something like that too.
I'll stay there.
There you go.
You can't never have too many beds.
No.
That's right.
So
Now, looking forward to that. Bo is going to be 2 in March, and he's getting such a personality about him. And I don't know, another big incentive for me is the girls have all said, gosh darn it, Dad, if we have a cabin out there, we're going to be out there all the time. So,
yeah,
that makes me feel good too, that they want to spend more time out there.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So,
Well, I think this was good.
yeah,
Kind of
going a little,
this is the format that I would love this podcast to be. We talk about anything and everything, and maybe some episodes we get really into magic. We did. I mean, talking about the fire and that kind of thing, but also talking about going trapping and killing bucks in the rut. I love just getting on here and talking. It feels like we're hanging out in the same room. So
We
Yeah.
we
I
talked
appreciate
about.
y'all taking the time.
I kind of feel bad now. I talk about cabins burning down and cabins being built. So,
Hey,
Well,
it's a circle.
that's a circle of life.
So
sir.
well, I'm excited and still getting ready to get out. We actually had one of our neighbors has some timber cut on his property, so it gave us a good opportunity. We had probably a 40-acre section that we'd never even set foot on. Access, you have to actually go through his property. So while they were out there, we had that cut, and we're going to had another probably 4 or 5 acre green field made. They got to get it cleaned up, and then he moved around and did some thinning on another spot of ours. So we've done a little bit of work.
Good.
It's one of those things for y'all out there. Now Tom's probably having a fit. You're cutting timber in the middle of deer season. They're going. So, but the funny thing was we had a camera with a feeder on it. The skidder came by, and at 4:30, there's deer feeding in the feeder. So they hear that stuff, especially
The
down
heck with
the
the heck with the deer. Send me the pin info so I can trap coyotes on it. and
Yeah.
bobcats
Yeah.
on it.
So I mean, it's but they hear that stuff, religiously, in Alabama. Somebody's always cutting timber. Somebody,
The deer in Alabama is it's like
Yeah.
rammed in their brain like a spin feeder going off.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
all those things coming down, you're dragging down green,
Yep.
honeysuckle, greenbrier, and all kinds of stuff, and they're following that skidder around.
Yeah. It was funny. In that field, I took our Vail drum mulch, not our drum mulcher, but the disc mulcher down there, right before season got it, and everything's still kind of green, down there. And I'm cutting around the edge of the field and look up, and there's a doe standing there looking at me with this. And y'all seen that thing? I mean, it'll throw a log as big as your leg 300 yards. And she's standing there looking at me with this thing, sound like a jet engine going off. But it's like you said. I'm pulling down the green thing, the green stuff, and smelled it. I guess so. So
Yeah. That's
so
crazy.
it doesn't scare me to do some work during deer season. So, but
If you don't, you never get done.
and you're never gonna get done anyway. But that's
Right.
one of those things you got to do it when you got time, and it's dry enough to do stuff like that. So,
Yes, sir.
looking forward to get down there and getting that project really, really going. So,
We need to pick another date in the near future to come there and talk about it.
what y'all are gonna do is screw around. You're gonna have to come down here and go turkey hunting. I know what y'all are doing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I'm gonna
Our
have
plan
7
has
people.
been revealed.
Yeah. Al, speaking of turkey hunting, we've got the Montevallo hunt coming up in March to do that again. That's one of we get to support one
I was
of
actually
our local.
drinking water out of
Yeah.
one of their cups.
Yeah. So that's something that me and William and Clay always get together and do that to support the Outdoor Scholars Program where I went to school. And Al comes down, does some filming. We get to go with Bob Walker and Eddie Salter and whoever else decides to show up down there. But that's a good time. Tom, you talk about it, man. That's one thing that that's probably my favorite hunt of the year because that's my 2 boys doing they like to deer hunt. Both of them are eat up with turkey hunting, and be able to take them and do something like that with them is just a special time for me. So
Absolutely, it goes by
It
too
was
fast.
fun last year.
got in.
Last year we all killed a bird down there.
We
And
did.
You just gotta
killing 3 birds in a weekend on the same piece of property in Alabama. It's pretty hard to do, but
Yeah.
us doing it was hard.
sometimes you just gotta get untraditional.
Yeah. Yeah.
We even
That's
play
right.
know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what it was. And I wish I'd have had the camera. And God, that was a beautiful hunt. I'll put the moves on that turkey.
Yeah.
We haven't really even talked about it yet, but me and him bought another piece of property during deer season. So now we've got the 48 in Missouri and we've got a 55 in Illinois. So we've got
Land baron.
the little pieces. We're taking little pieces. We're starting off small, but this 55 in Illinois has got some really, really good opportunities to do some management work. We've got some invasives. We've got access issues. We've got food issues. It's going to take a lot to get where we want it to go, but it's already got a really good foundation and a pace. Deer population's good, strong. A lot of young deer, a lot of good, promising young deer. Anyway, that's down the road, future things to come. So I'm excited.
Future content to be had.
Sounds good.
Thank y'all.
Awesome. Good seeing you all
It was a great
tonight.
time.
We'll talk to you all soon.